All right, guys, welcome in. It is Tuesday fun day, I believe, here, as we've got one series in the books. We got one more remaining, a game 4 here tonight, all-important game 4. We don't have a finals until next Thursday, so depending on what happens here tonight will depend on whether or not we have another NBA tip-off show anytime soon, but we still have a couple of things to be able to make sure that we can cash a ticket or two here tonight in this game. We're going to do our best to point you in that direction as the one and only Teddy Covers in the house here on the NBA Tip-Off Show. And the all-important closeout game, Teddy, not easy to get. Boston did it again last night. Boy, oh boy, skin of their teeth, but they finished it. Dallas is hoping to get it done. Minnesota is hoping to extend. What are your thoughts so far, what you've seen through 3 games in this series? We all originally thought maybe 6-7 games. We certainly weren't thinking sweep. Were we here, Teddy?
No, I wasn't. And the market certainly weren't. We talk about how the series is priced. It wasn't, it was priced as it's supposed to be a very competitive series. Minnesota was minus 150 at the open, which basically says we expect a 6 or 7 game series. Obviously, it hasn't been that way so far. And it's worth noting in the history of the NBA, we haven't had both conference finals end in sweeps ever. Last year, they had a chance, and then Boston won 3 straight games to make things real interesting against Miami in that series. But the history says that in general, teams like Minnesota can find ways to hang on. And look at the series price here. The series price really stood out to me. All right. Boston up 3-0. You had to lay, $500 to win $1. All right. Dallas is up 300, and you're laying much less than that. 16 to win $1 if you shop around. So the markets are saying that Minnesota is liver than Indiana was to potentially put together a comeback in this series. That being said, the final, as you mentioned, the finals don't start till next Thursday. So if you're a conspiracy theorist and thinks the NBA needs more product, well, you'll be on Minnesota tonight.
Exactly. Well, and the big test is going to be, is Scott Foster the ref here tonight? It's the question everyone's going to have in the chat room, Teddy, and that'll tell us whether or not they brought in the extender. Will tell us whether or not what's going to happen here tonight. But this is an interesting line here, Teddy, today.
Let me jump in, Joe.
Go, shoot.
Let me jump in real quick. Yeah, Scott Foster's the lead ref tonight.
I know. I knew I was just beating the chat room to the punch. I already knew that, but yes, I knew the chat room was going to be all over that. The extender is in tonight here, guys. That'll give you a pretty good idea of, I don't know, Teddy, the market has been interesting with this one here. Down to 1.5, the total's at 211. Let me ask you, how important is Derek Lively to you when you made your line here? Because there's a lot of talk about Derek Lively not being available to this team.
So there's a lot of stuff to unpack here. Let's start with this. This number opened 3/3.5, just about everywhere. The markets got immediately a bet down, and now with Lively status today, it's been bet down even more. So we've seen a 1.5/2 points off the opener shaded because Lively is not expected to play this evening. The latest I have on him is just doubtful. He's not out. That said, Doncic is probable, and Kleber, who, if they're missing both Lively and Kleber, it's a much bigger problem. They're missing one of the two. Kleber's been upgraded to questionable. And that's an upgrade. He was doubtful. Now he's questionable. So there's hope for Dallas in that regard. Obviously, these are instrumental players, both of them, for the Mavericks, and neither one has their full value truly reflected in the point spread because they're not the superstars here. That being said, what's happened in this series? All right. It's been like Indiana-Boston. Like the Pacers lost all 4 games to Celtics, but they covered the spread in 3 out of 4. All right. Indiana was the value team in that series. Here, Dallas has clearly been the value team. Minnesota's 2-6 ATS. since that starting off the postseason 6-0 ATS. They've only covered twice since in their last 8 ball games. So they've been consistently overvalued in this series, and they've essentially been overvalued since the middle of the second round when this point spread failure began for Minnesota. But in these competitive games in this series, and again, all 3 of them were anyone's game with 4 or 5 minutes to play. And all 3 of them, it was Dallas who was able to make the plays down the stretch. How and why? Real simple. Minnesota might have the number 1 defense in the NBA in the regular season. But right now, Luka and Kyrie during crunch time, I'm not going to say they're impossible to stop, but that duo and their ability to distribute to their teammates has made Dallas an excellent team down the stretch of tight ball games. We've seen it throughout this postseason. I would be surprised if we see it again tonight.
Yeah, and that's all. It's very hard to trust Minnesota in the fourth quarter. I mean, they have been outplayed. It's crazy. And not for a lack of talent, Teddy, but it appears experience certainly matters in this year's playoffs here. We saw it again with Indiana not being able to hold on to a lead late. We've seen it 3 games in a row with Minnesota not being able to get the buckets when they need them. I mean, to outplay a team for 3 quarters of the game, Teddy, and then when it matters the most to disappear, well, that's when experience comes in, right? Sometimes you got to lose before you can win. Doncic's lost a lot before he got to this point here. Kyrie's already been down that road and has a ring. So experience sometimes matters when we get this late in the playoffs, doesn't it?
In the NBA, more than any other sport, the postseason experience matters. Okay. When you talk about who's going to make it to the finals, all right. Every once in a while, and by once in a while, I mean like once a decade, you have a team that didn't make the playoffs last year that all of a sudden gets good and goes on a big run. Or a team that didn't win. I'm trying to think, with Golden State went from, did they win the first round series the first year and then winning a title? Or do they not?
I think so.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
they might have. But I mean, teams don't go from not winning anything to winning 4 series. It just doesn't happen in the NBA postseason. It really doesn't. There are a handful of exceptions, but it very rarely happens. And when it does happen, it does because the team just picked up Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen in the offseason. I think Boston was in the playoffs before that year. So when you have teams that, especially at this stage of the postseason, we're talking about conference finals, everyone's tired, everyone's banged up. The experience at this time of the year matters more than any other time because you know how to get up off a loss. You've been in these spots. You know how to manage your injuries and manage your minutes and manage your effort. You've taken the punches and understand how to withstand the punches and punch back. A lot of it's psychological and a lot of it's physical. And the playoff experience, it matters a ton. And, that's why Boston was able to dispatch with Indiana as easily as they are. And that's why Dallas is going to beat Minnesota. If they don't beat them tonight, Minnesota ain't winning the next 4.
No, absolutely not. You and I talked last week, Teddy. We said, all right, well, everything Minnesota did this year, the way they built the team they played, they wanted Denver. They wanted to take out Denver. Then they took out Denver. And then it was like, oh, shit, what are we supposed to do now? Because Dallas is not Denver. And the truly greats, Teddy, elevate the guys around him, and it feels that's what we're getting with Kyrie and Doncic right now, that these 2 guys, everyone else is playing a little bit above their heads here for Dallas around those guys, and that's what championship teams usually do. We're seeing it with Boston the same way.
And on the other side of the equation, I mean, I'm not a finger pointer, but if I'm going to point a finger, Karl Anthony Towns has been terrible in this series. His shooting's been terrible. He's standing on the perimeter, jacking up bad 3-pointers. He's killing their offensive possessions. Karl Anthony Towns is having a bad series. Maybe if Lively doesn't play tonight, it will help his game. But what's his numbers? He's shooting 27% for the series, 13% from downtown. He's 3 of 22 from beyond the arc. And he's reached double-digit rebounds once, and he doesn't have a block shot in the series. This is the one that freaks me out. 2 fouls is the most he's had in any game.
Crazy.
I want a guy, I want my big man beating you up, bruising you. You want to come in the paint? Sure. I'll take the foul. By the fourth quarter, you ain't coming in the paint no more. And we're not seeing that from Karl Anthony Towns at all. So if I'm pointing a finger, that's the guy who I'm pointing the finger at. He's not had a good series. And they've all been close. It's been Minnesota, had they been able to make plays down the stretch, would be up 2-1 or 3-0 in this series. But they can't get stops during crunch time. And I don't see how that changes tonight.
Between Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns' history of big games and showing up in the playoffs, not exactly great. And you're seeing it again here. And can't blame Anthony Edwards. Kid is 22 years old. He's going to be the face of this league for a long, long time. People forget Jordan didn't win shit his first 6 years either. Teddy, he couldn't win anything either. But you got to lose before you can win. And I think we just saw that with Boston, did we not? I mean, congratulations. Yeah. Boston doesn't win that game 2 years ago at all against Indiana.
No, they probably don't win either one of those games.
Yep.
That they knocked out against the Pacers 2 years ago. And it's Minnesota. Minnesota is a roster that is constructed in a very weird way. They paid a lot of money for a lot of guys. They have contracts coming up. They have salary cap problems. The core of this team may or may not be together a year or two from now, which is definitely a concern. But it's not like Dallas has been a team where Luka and Kyrie have been on the floor together for years. Denver was that team that had all the experience of the continuity of guys that have been playing together and starting together for many years. But in that instance, the good defense beat the good offense. In this instance, the good offense is beating the good defense. And Minnesota, if you're a T-Wolves fan, if you're a T-Wolves bettor, if you're on the team, if you're on the roster, if you're involved in Minnesota, you can't look at this season as anything but a roaring success. All right. They've had a great year. They reached the Western Conference Finals. So even though there's disappointment at this stage, and again, we'll see. The quotes coming out of the locker room were, "We're going to come to play tonight." But what you often see in the game fours, in a potential sweep, in a 3-1 series, is that when the punch comes, Dallas is going to punch tonight. When the punch comes, oftentimes the team that's facing elimination has a real hard time rallying back. And we'll see if Minnesota has the character to do it tonight. But one of the reasons, and I did something, I rarely take the team down 0-3 in a series. I did it yesterday with Indiana, and I wasn't ballsy enough to do it for the full game. I only did the first half. I'm like, Pacers are coming to play. I worry about them running out of steam. I worry about Boston throwing a punch. I want to get in and out of this one by halftime. And it all worked out fine, all good. I didn't need that last shot with the second left. We were +4 for the first half already. But it was a scenario in which I worried about if things went. I said this: if they didn't cover the first half, they didn't cover the second half. And I kind of feel that way for Minnesota tonight. If Minnesota's not hanging around, if they're down, I don't know that they're gonna that the second half is gonna work any better in their favor. So I wouldn't argue with anyone that likes the T-Wolves to look at a first half bet as opposed to a full game bet. But I'm on the Dallas side. Look, it's 3 games for Dallas and 3 overs so far in this series.
Right.
All right.
Correct.
What's the undervalued commodity in this series? Dallas and over. Okay. That's the way to look. The markets have the results have shown us that Dallas has been priced too cheap and the total's been priced too low. It's not like it's been crazy shooting numbers. It's not like it's been or free throw foul fest or anything like that. The total's been priced too low and the Mavericks have been priced too low, and that's why Dallas is 3-0 ATS and the over is 3-0 so far. And it's the only way I would look for game 4. But I know that there are people who want to think the Minnesota side here. If I'm playing Minnesota, it'd be first half as opposed to full game.
We had the same conversation in the chat room yesterday, and everyone was in agreement here that if you're going to back Indy, back them early. That's the way to do it. If you're going to back Indy, back them early. And the same thing, quotes coming out of there with Carlisle. I was like, well, yeah, we're leaving it all out there. We're coming after them. We're going to punch back. You're hearing the same stuff out of Minnesota. And listen, they didn't win the first half last game. They kind of put themselves behind the 8 ball, but they're going to empty the tank. I don't see why you worry about the fourth quarter when you get there. If you're down 20, what the hell's the point anyway? So if you can't if you can't win the first half, your ass ain't winning the game. That's kind of the way I look at it, right, Teddy?
Yeah, it's the same scenario. It's like Minnesota. To me, it makes sense if I'm debating full game. I'll put it on first half because they could cover first half and still lose full game. I don't think they can not cover first half and cover. I don't think it flips quite as easily the other way around. So if, the first half's the one that in my mind is the most. But I'm not looking to play Minnesota. I got my money on Dallas. I advise my clients to play Dallas. I use Dallas as a big game breakdown on WagerTalk today earlier this morning. I'm talking up the Mavs here. And I played them on the money line. I laid minus, I think it was 120 with Dallas. And in this spread range, that's what I'll do. The 1.5/2.
And I don't know why we think all of a sudden. I mean, what was the game one? Was that 18-point comeback? I think they were terrible. Or game two there, Teddy, they were absolutely awful. Dallas in the first half. And then, of course, the second half in the fourth quarter. And guess what happens here? They've shown no ability to be able to adjust. They've thrown, and I'll give Finch credit, they have tried everything at Doncic. They have thrown the entire kitchen sink at Doncic, and he's still beating their ass. They have, and it's hard enough to try to deal with Doncic. Then you got to deal with Kyrie as well. So from an X's and O's standpoint, why do we think we're going to get anything different than what we already got in the first 3 games? What the hell else is there that Minnesota can do besides make a few more shots in the fourth quarter and give yourself a chance to win late?
Yeah, Dallas has shot the ball really well against an elite defense.
Yes.
So in theory, the Mavs don't shoot the ball as well tonight. Minnesota comes to play, and then T-Wolves can send this game, the series, back to Minnesota. And as we saw last year, you get that first win, and then you go home, and all of a sudden momentum shifts and things get real interesting, like it did for Miami, Boston last year. So, this series isn't over. The price point for Dallas to win the series is telling us that Minnesota may still be live or liver than your average team down 3-0. But again, all I'm interested in is current form. All right. I don't care what the season long stats say. And Minnesota right now, there's, when you have a team that struggles repeatedly to close out victories, that's, especially in the postseason, that's something that can linger from game to game.
That poor guy. I love the quote. What was it? What was Edward saying? I still think we can beat them. Like, no, dude. Somebody explain to this kid what happens when you go down 3-0. There is no beating. Do you think is there a correlation here, Teddy, to Minnesota and under, Dallas and over, or do you think really, quite honestly, at this point, it's all about the scoring, and it's all about some of these guys showing up who haven't shown up for Minnesota? And either way, we're looking probably at another over in this spot here, like we did in the first 3 games.
So the market has certainly moved in that direction. I don't see a strong correlation between side and total in this game at all. If you ask, there's at least some modest correlation between T-Wolves and under, perhaps, just because Dallas has kind of solved them. And if Minnesota can, and you talked about all the different defenses that the T-Wolves have tried to throw on Luka, and none of it's worked. So I suppose we could see a scenario in which I think there's some correlation between Minnesota and under. I can see Dallas winning a game 90-88. I could see him winning a game 120-118. I don't think it matters at all for the Mavs if it's a high scoring or a low scoring affair. Whereas Minnesota, the whole issue in this series is that Minnesota hasn't been able to get the stops they normally get during down the stretch of tight games. If they do here, it certainly helps the under.
So we got a couple of shout out to the crew hanging out with us. Reek in the house, William Bennett here, Eric D, Titan CT, Big Daddy in the house here. Also looking at the over, Have here, the Gold Eagle 99. Joe Obi gone fishing. Finley, that's right, Obi Toppin, unfortunately, but he did go over his points last night, John. I'll tell you that, though. So Obi Toppin did hit it last night.
Again.
Hell of a way to go with that one there, Obi Toppin. We appreciate it. But, Teddy, it's a pick 'em in the first half, right? So if guys are looking to back Minnesota at a pick 'em price, your first half is probably the best bet to go, and then hell, keep an eye on the game. Watch what goes on. You're going to be able, you can probably jump in at some point and get Minnesota at plus points anyway.
Sure. So I'm seeing Dallas minus a half. Half,
okay.
Minus 0. Yeah. So it's not a true pick 'em. They got to win by a point. But that being said, a tie score, bank error in your favor in that regard. Like the old Monopoly chance card. So there's worse bets to make than T-Wolves first half. I'll leave it at that. That said, I like Dallas tonight. I think Dallas closes them out. I think the matchup problems that Minnesota has had in this series aren't going away.
No, they are absolutely not. But if you were going to focus here on some guys that, and I think the numbers, all they have done, Teddy, has gone up for Doncic, I believe. I think his points prop is up to 30.5 now, is what he is. And I believe even his PRA also up there, 48.5 is his PRA here. I don't see any reason not to continue to back Luka. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you're looking at Dallas, then you're probably looking at the overs with Luka again, right? Why would anything change here tonight at home?
So let's talk about what Luka's done in this series, because it's worth noting he scored 32 plus in all 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
12 rebounds, assists, 23 rebounds, assists, 14 rebounds, assists. So he's gone over PRA. What did you say, was 48.5? No, last time it was only 48. And he hit 47. So despite the huge usage rates, the big games, he's still gone under that in 2 of the 3 games. His shot attempts have been going down, 26, 23, 20. The T-Wolves defensive game plan is clearly centered and focused on Luka. And when you have a guy who's been the center point of the series, who's been an absolute monster, if the series ended right now, it would be MVP, and he's still gone under PRA 2 out of 3 games, that tells you the Luka props, babe, you can't bet him anymore. I mean, you can if you want to, but from a value standpoint, can't do it. Everyone's betting Luka over. The books know that. The markets know that. You're laying a premium, and you're being asked to lay too much. He may go over tonight. He could fly over tonight. But those aren't the type of bets I'm looking for right now. And again, player props, I get it. You want the action. Luka over, to me, I'm not betting him under. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Not a chance I'm looking to bet Luka under. But if I'm looking for player props, I'm going to highlight somebody else, not Luka. The markets are not sleeping on what Luka's been doing.
What about this guy here? A lot of now people will point out Gafford is the starter over, over his who just got hurt. I can't remember his name here, but you know who I'm talking about.
Cleaver,
but Lively rather. But Lively actually averaged more minutes, I think. Did he not, than Gafford for the most part in this series? So I know Gafford would start, but Lively would average more minutes, mostly because his points and his average across the ball was much better than Gafford. But he was 8.5 points for the series. He's now 10.5 here. Do we expect Gafford's usage to go through the roof now without Lively available?
Yes. There's an over. And that being said, he played the whole second half or most of the second half last time.
Yes. Yep.
He finished only 4 shot attempts and 3 rebounds. Okay. So, Gafford blocks is the prop I look at, because he's going to be on the floor more. You're going to get the opportunities. And Gafford blocks over is one that makes a lot of sense. It's all they've been doing. We had 8 the last 2 games. That's what he's been doing. That's what they want him to do. That's what the defensive game plan asks him to do. So that's one where he's going to get the chances. When it comes to points or points rebounds or PRA, however you want to do it, when you have a guy who's used to playing 22 minutes and all of a sudden he plays 40 minutes, a lot of times those fourth quarter minutes aren't quite as good as you hope they would be in terms of putting up numbers. So that'd be my biggest concern about that. But if I'm playing one prop with Daniel Gafford, it's going to be blocks over.
Oh, I love that too. What about we talk about a rough for Cat. Rudy Gobert's he's had some foul trouble in a couple of games here too, Teddy, and his numbers have come crashing too in the prop betting market. I believe, namely his rebounds. He was averaging his number was 12.5 for pretty much every game thus far. That's dropped down. This was even 9.5 this morning. It's finally starting to get back up there. But Gobert's problem last couple of games is his ass is on the bench because he gets himself into some foul trouble here. Where has Gobert been, and how would you look at him in this game?
And of course, this is Rudy Gobert who fouled out in Game 7 against the Nuggets. One of 5 of the last 6 games 6 of the 7 games he had 4 fouls or more. And I would expect the exact same game plan for Dallas when it comes to Rudy Gobert. When you have multiple guys who can create off the dribble, like Dallas does with Luka and Kyrie, and they can get in the lane, what do? They cause your center to have foul problems. And that's what Dallas has been able to do in this series. And again, we got Scott Foster. Maybe he doesn't go whistle anything on Gobert and company. Maybe they get their extra game. But I'm not betting Minnesota because I think I'm not betting Minnesota in general. But my argument for Minnesota is not, Rudy Gobert is going to have this monster game tonight. If Minnesota is going to win, it's going to be their role players. It's going to be Ant. Much more so, I think. And maybe Towns does something. I mean, obviously, I ripped Towns earlier. They're if Towns had 3 good games, they could be 3-0 in this series. So maybe we see something from Towns.
His rebound props. But quite some cracks. Rebounds is all effort, Daddy. Like that's what it's all effort, right? And this Karl Anthony Towns been sulking now for how many games in a row? His number is down to 7.5. It was 9.5, and now it's down to 7.5. So the market has completely stuck a fork in him. But it appears the market loves Naz Reid, and why not? He's been one of the more consistent guys for this team here. Why not? 12.5 points tonight, somewhere in that ballpark. He's scored, I think, at least 14 points in all 3 games in this series. Naz Reid is a guy that's going to see the court. He's going to get the minutes, is he not, Teddy?
Absolutely. And then, again, we're talking about the NBA 6th Man of the Year. You talked about how he went over that number in every game so far in this series. And the key, again, is the opportunities. Dating back to the Nuggets series, all right? He's had lots of opportunities by the basket, 12, 7, 9, 13, 10 shot attempts in his last 5 ball games. So when you get the opportunities, goes a long way towards reaching and getting over some of those numbers. So, no argument with the Naz Reid over. Like we're talking about, if Minnesota's going to hang around and have a chance to win this one, guys like Naz Reid are going to have to step up.
Yes. And that, of course, I think another guy that a lot of guys in the chat room are looking at is P.J. Washington, who seems to be continuing to hit big shots when they matter the most, Teddy, here. And I think let me make sure if you guys have in the chat room, what is his 3 points? I would imagine it's 2.5 for the threes made with him again. Let me just make sure. 1.5. Yeah, 2.5 basically is what we're looking at for P.J. Washington. 3.5 for Luka, 2.5 for Kyrie. But is it me, Teddy, or does he seem to be showing up when it matters the most here for Dallas in these games, especially third and fourth quarter?
So you asked me who made himself the most money this postseason? This guy right here, PJ Washington.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
There's no one. And when you think about where he was, 4 months ago, languishing in lottery land, and to go from that to being a huge competitor on a Western Conference Finals team, the trade deadline was very, very good to this young man, and he certainly made himself. And I think his contract expire? He's due for an extension. He's made himself a whole lot of money. Remember the OKC series where they were talking about how he was a monster and we got to cut the head off the snake, and they couldn't do it. I mean, I guess they did the last 2 games. He had the 3 straight 20-point games, and the last 2 games he had 10 and 9. But the effort they put on him, somebody else was open. And then obviously he's been in double digits in all 3 games in this series. I have no argument conceptually with taking PJ Washington over. He's been an undervalued commodity this postseason, and he's played like a guy who's playing. He's playing for tens of millions of dollars, which is a heck of a lot of money for anybody, even NBA players, especially the ones that haven't signed that one big fat deal yet. PJ Washington. No argument with an over.
Yeah, he is, mate. He has been money. If it ain't broke, I ain't fixing it with PJ Washington. Consensus in the chat room, Teddy, seems to be that they don't think Edwards is going to be passing a lot tonight. They think he is certainly going to get his shots, good or bad, that he going to play a little less team ball, a little bit more. Screw it, move over. I'm going to try to win this game at points here. So 27.5 I see as his point prop, but I would imagine he is correlated to any sort of Minnesota bet for guys too as well, no?
For me, at least, it would be a strong correlation between Anthony Edwards over and Minnesota full game. It's not a bet I'm going to make, but I certainly it's not a bet I'm trying to talk anyone out of either. It's not like Edwards hasn't been ball hogging in a real way in this series. Maybe tonight's the night that he does it, but that's not really his game. I'm just scrolling back through and see how he took 29 shot attempts in game 1 against Denver. And I remember that game thinking, wow, that was a lot. That's not what he usually does. But is he going to get that number tonight? He might. And if he does, you shouldn't want to be caught with any under in your pocket. 9 rebounds, 9 assists.
Doesn't he look like he's in his head, though,
11
Teddy?
and 8 the first 3 games of this series.
Like the quotes out of him are crazy because he's like, well, maybe I should get other guys that, like, he's been all over the map and he looks very hesitant late in game. It doesn't feel like the game's coming natural to him. He looks like he's thinking about it, which is never a good thing at this point.
He's 22 years old. He doesn't have a lot of postseason experience. He's taken his team to the Western Conference Finals. I can't say anything bad about Anthony Edwards. He's been a monster. He made me money all year, and I love the guy. That said, from a live betting standpoint, here's a little. Again, all I can tell you is what I look for, what I do. From a live betting standpoint, I hate when the point guard for the team I'm betting on is not from the get-go is trying to get himself going as opposed to trying to get his teammates going. I would much rather have a point guard with no points and 10 assists at halftime, and second half you can get you can find your own offense, than vice versa. So there have been a handful of games, and especially and when we talk about in-game betting, when I see Anthony Edwards has 25 in the first half, in my mind that's a bet against Minnesota for the second half, not a bet on. And there have been a handful of games here in the postseason where I've seen that from one point guard or another who's taken a little bit too much control and not let his team get into rhythm, and that matters in the second half and the fourth quarter when your guys aren't in proper rhythm. All of a sudden, all those jumpers fall up short, and you end up losing. So that's something I pay a lot. For in game, that's something I pay a lot of attention to. Is how much is the point guard distributing and how much he's looking for his own shot early on.
Got it. It's being mentioned here, Teddy, in the chat room, and I'm laughing as I'm seeing this conversation go on. Let me just see if I can confirm this, but apparently it looks like there is a bet in which you can look at Minnesota to win 4 straight. And it looks like it's, and now mind you, Ted, this has never happened before, right? We've never had a team lose down 3-0, right? And lose 4 consecutive. And it looks like it's somewhere in the 35 to 40 to 1 mark here, which you had mentioned there are worse bets to make than Minnesota early. This would have to be one of the absolute worst bets to ever throw out there, because it should be somewhere like, I don't know. Yeah, 3,500 is what I'm seeing for the Wolves to win 4 in a row here.
That's baffling to me, because the Wolves to win the series is only 10 to 1. And Correct. They have to win 4 in a row to win the series. So if it's 10 to 1 to win the series and 40 to, what did you say? 30 to 1?
35 to 1.
35 to 1 to win 4 straight. Well, the true odds are 10 to 1.
Correct.
So 35 to 1 is a way better way to get at that than 10 to 1. But let's note how these series prices are set. All right.
Right.
Especially as we get further on in the series. What the bookmakers are doing, they're taking a theoretical money line for every game.
Correct.
And that's how they're coming up with the series prices. So here's game 4 at home. Minnesota is what on the money line? Looking at the WagerTalk live, free live odds screen. Plus 100, plus 105. You shop around.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what they are in game 4. We can anticipate they'd be similar to game 6. Right?
Correct.
If there's a game 6 back in Dallas. So plus 100, plus 100, even money. They're going to be favorites in the other 2 games, assuming there are 2 more games, as if they're game 5 and game 7. Minnesota's chalk in those games. So we're saying, oh my God, you're 10 to 1 dogs to win this series. Well, that's just the money lines, and you parlay them together. So now you're talking about 35 to 1 payout for the same thing. It's a way better bet. It's a bet worth making. It's probably going to lose, but if you're getting paid 35 to 1, some of the markets are giving you 10 to 1 for. That's a bet that every sharp bettor I know will get down on, regardless if it's a great bet, a terrible bet or not. You're getting the best of the number by a pretty wide margin. That being said,
Minnesota. The only question I have is was that a pre-flop bet where Minnesota would win 4? I think it was pre-series that you could have got them at 3,500. So that would make much more sense than getting 10 to 1 or 35 to 1 right now, where if they win 4 straight, guess what? They win the series here, guys. Look forward here, Teddy. Let's say Dallas wins it tonight. They get it done. It's Dallas-Boston. What would you, any idea on what you'd be looking at? Because Boston would obviously have the home court, I believe, right? That would be, game 1 would be in Boston on Thursday. And what are we looking at for a number here, do you think, as this series takes center stage in a week?
So my powering number, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to look off screen, but my powering number has the Celtics 4 points higher, 4.5 points higher than Dallas. So I'm giving a 1.5 for the home court. The markets are giving more than that. But I would anticipate a number in the 6.5, 7 range, maybe. That's just a guesstimate.
At Boston. So at Boston. And then what do you think when at Boston? Okay. So, and you think what series price would be somewhere relative to that? Like what we just saw Boston? Well, I guess it wouldn't, because Boston really hasn't played anybody that they were that cheap.
Yeah, it'll be shorter.
Price on.
It'll be the series price will be significantly shorter than what we've seen for any Boston series so far. That said, the Celtics will still be favored, and they'll still be. I mean, I can't imagine they'd be less than minus 250. Minus $3, minus $4, maybe less. I don't think so. Then.
I don't think so either. Looks like we've got Reid in the chat saying he's got a ticket for Boston to win game 1 and Mavs to win the series plus 500 on DraftKings. Boston game 1, Dallas win the series. Well, what the hell would Dallas winning the series be in that on its own there? That feels like it would have been a bigger number.
Well, the whole point is that after Boston win game 1, you can get Dallas to win the series at that price in theory.
Correct.
Without having to parlay.
Right. Exactly.
Because the odds will adjust. Yeah. But look, my series prices, my points, these are my numbers. They're not market numbers. They're guesstimates. Yep. I expect it somewhere in that range. If I think the number is going to be 6.5 and it opens 4.5, I'll be looking at Boston. Then I think it's going to be 6.5 and opens 8.5. I'll be looking at Dallas, in theory. But that's just where my guesstimate of where the numbers are going to come based on my power rate.
What is the any idea, Teddy, from what you've seen with the line move? Where is the public on this game tonight? We're being asked here. I'm seeing pretty much even splits across the board as far as tickets goes. It does look obviously like Minnesota's getting a little bit more money than what Dallas is, but does it feel like there's a big public side one way or the other in this one tonight?
I would call Dallas the public team here, but I wouldn't call it a big public team.
We're not big, right?
Yeah. This isn't one of those scenarios with the books that everyone. There are games that everyone comes and bets one side. This isn't one of those for the sports books. I had an opportunity to talk with Arthur DeCesar, the race sports supervisor at the Westgate Superbook here in Las Vegas earlier this morning, and he said he was surprised how light the action had been for this game from a public standpoint. Like
really,
the public has not. Yes, he said it was the same thing with the 3-0 series yesterday. The public got involved less than he expected, and so far that had been the case for Minnesota and Dallas as well. That the handle was down in the 3-0 series, and there wasn't a true, public loading upside. So, look, I'm interested when it comes to fading the public. You show me an 85, 80+% consensus for a meaningful single event game.
Right.
And I'll start to pay attention. But the 60%, 65%, make yourself crazy with that shit.
No, absolutely not. We are seeing Nas getting a lot of love in the chat room here today across the board. A lot of guys looking to get Nas Reid props up and over here tonight. Can't argue with it. He's going to have the minutes. He is going to have a time. One final question. Guys want to know, what do we do with Kyrie here tonight? Does Kyrie get the points? Does he get the assist? Is he a dish man here tonight, Teddy? What do you think Kyrie does, except probably win the game with 16 points in the fourth quarter?
I would, but that's the problem with your Kyrie prop if you're trying to figure out.
That's right.
Because he could be a scorer, he could be a facilitator. That's going to depend on how the game progresses. That's not something that I can say with any degree of confidence before tip-off, and that's why I'm not betting Kyrie Irving props too.
No.
So
I think you're rolling the dice with Kyrie. You know what you're going to get from Luka with Kyrie as needed.
Yeah, and that's what makes him as great as he is, because he can fill, he can do what the team needs to be done. Guys, he's a champion.
He's a pretty good, and I don't even know if it's right. I saw somebody had a list where the game's all-time great number twos, right? Like sidekick, so to speak, Robins, Batman and Robin, Pippen obviously being number one. But Kyrie made a top five, was one of the top five with him and LeBron, was probably one of the best that could have allowed LeBron to get that first one there in Cleveland. Hard to argue. I mean, if he gets another one here with Luka when it's all said and done, then my goodness, one of the all-time great number twos there, Teddy.
So who was the number two? Was that Kareem or Magic?
It was
exactly.
Yeah, that's another great one.
What the F's a number two, dude? All right, was it Jerry West or was it Wilt Chamberlain?
Was it Steph Curry or Kevin Durant?
Sure.
That's also another interesting. Was it Kobe or Shaq, Teddy?
Well, it was. So Kobe was the two for the first three. And then Shaq got traded.
Yep, and then Shaq came and took Dwayne Wade as his number two, and that was it. Unbelievable there. What do you got?
Well, then Shaq was Dwayne Wade's number. And Shaq wasn't even Wade's number 2. There was someone else on Miami. There were many other guys in the Miami team before Shaq. Shaq was the end of his career then. But he went from a number 1 to a number 2. But it's kind of like whatever. I'm not going to make bathroom jokes. Let's go.
And don't forget, Stan was the original coach of that team. Just like people forget that. Stan Gundy was originally started the year as the coach of that championship team, and Pat Riley's like, no, this ain't gonna work. Bye, Stan. Bye. Don't let the door hit you in the ass. What do you got? What do you got rolling tonight over at WagerTalk, Teddy?
I got to zip it. I'm about to say inappropriate things about Stan Van Gundy, who we should feel sorry for. Let me put it in. Yeah. I'll put it this way. You ain't gonna hear me nothing about Bill Walton today either. I'm with you.
Excuse me. Cost us.
That being said, may he rest in peace.
Yes.
But Bill Walton and his fucking Fab Fives ripping the guys that didn't understand culture. Whatever. Rest in peace, Bill. That being said, I went on a tirade with my buddy yesterday talking about Bill Walton and why, and then all the stuff he did against he was anti-Fab Five, like crazy racist. Like Bill Walton. No, he's not a liberal. He's a freaking racist jerk who doesn't like him because he wore shorts that weren't his tighty whitey shorts. But whatever. Yeah. Nonetheless, tonight over at WagerTalk.com, I'm in play on the Dallas Mavericks on the money line. I gave it out on WagerTalk today. I wrote it up as a free play, and I'll give it to you guys right here. I have the Mavs on the money line. It's a small play, action wager, but I think Dallas closed out the series. I've been wrong before, but I don't think I'm wrong on this one. I also have a single best bet in MLB for tonight. The baseball's been real good. The basketball's been real good. I'm an 80% run in the playoffs right now, 1-4 of the last 5. And of course, long-term, you guys know, long-term has been well over 200 units of profit in the NBA dating back to 2022. So it's been a good sport for my clients and I, and hopefully it'll be a good sport for us again tonight. But don't buy my NBA play. You just got to hear for nothing.
You're not alone in hating Walton in the chat room, Teddy. I'll just tell you that. There's a couple of shots being thrown, but...
Oh, dude, and he's supposed to be... He's like, oh, I'm so cool. I'm a deadhead. Yeah. No, you're not. You're a freaking racist jerk. Get off the TV. I've got to shut up. I got to shut up, dude. Because I'm going to start going off of Van Gundy in a minute. And
don't get me started with Gundy, too.
And then Van Gundy, let's not go there. Me and you will have that conversation off air, Joe. That's not one for us. Rest in peace, Bill Walton.
I love it. Listen, in his defense, though, he never met a hit of acid he didn't like. So, rest in peace there, Bill. You could certainly have all the acid you need now. John Obigon, Fish and Finley. Best of luck tonight, guys. Jack Barco in the house. Skins big fan. Always a pleasure to see you. Roman Torres, RJ, Robert, Eric D, Loose 72. Elliot Jameson, good luck with that, with the Nas plays here tonight. Elliot, looks like you're going all in on him here to get it done for you tonight. Should be a hell of a game. Have, Big Daddy, shots were fired about 20 minutes ago. That is correct here. Gentlemen, we appreciate the time as always. Grind at all times on Instagram. It is, what do they say? It is bourbon time, my friend. Pour to Jameson and get ready for what should be a pretty interesting game here tonight. And if, in fact, there is a Game 6, we'll be back again tomorrow and breaking it down for you. If there is no Game 6 and we're just going to regroup and wait for next Thursday to begin, you'll see us probably at the start of early next week, Monday or so, getting ready, pre-gaming. All that should be Boston and Dallas, which should be a pretty darn good series. So we'll have to wait and see. Until then, cash those tickets. Best of luck. Teddy, crush it here tonight, guys. We will see you again, hopefully, pretty soon here. Best of luck. We'll see you then.